How you doing, sports fans? Sean Palmer here, and a laundry basket in the back. So let's try and avoid that. There we go. So Sean Palmer here. Seth Kamen's on his way. Syracuse last night, big winner. Big winner in basketball. First time in a while that really didn't have to worry about what was going down in the fourth quarter. Taking a 20-point lead into the fourth quarter, and really just they were as good as could be. This is the team that I was hoping to see in Maui. It's not the team that I found in Maui, but hell, we'll take what we can get. Last night, an 80-57 drubbing of LSU. And if you watched any of that game, LSU was basically throwing up threes and just bricking after bricking after bricking. And I'm relishing in the fact that Syracuse won by 20 last night and didn't have a heart attack at the end of the game. Unlike what I did watching the Islanders play last night at Prudential Center. Seth Kamen has joined the show, everybody. And Seth was privy to that absolutely horrendous third period done by the Islanders. Seth, how long had it been since you had been to a hockey game?
About four, since I went with you to the Islanders Devils.
That's a long time ago, my friend.
Pre-COVID.
Yeah, pre-COVID. So, look, I always say that hockey is the best sport live. It's definitely the biggest difference between watching it on TV and live is hockey. And I think that in every other sport, when you get to the NBA, going to an NBA game is basically you're just going for show. If you go to and I'm talking professional sports only. If you go to an NFL game, well, I got a better seat on my couch than I probably do in the game, unless I'm paying $300 for it. If I'm going to a Major League Baseball game, well, I love going to a Major League Baseball game, but it's an event, right? And it's really, really slow. We all understand what baseball is, and there's a lot that could go wrong there. And then we got going to the NHL. Seth just talked about it, and he went to the game last night. And look, HD saved NHL on TV, but there's nothing like an NHL game in person. Nothing.
I'm not sure. I agree the NFL is the worst to go to in person. I don't think there's any question about that. To me, it would probably go NFL, baseball. I get the NHL is I enjoy the basketball more, but the NHL is probably a better live game. But it was fun. It was a good time last night. It was a heck of a game. You know, forgetting your team lost, it was still a heck of a game. I'm glad I went. You know, it's been a long time.
Look, 5-4, seeing 9 goals in person harks back to the Gretzky era, right? And the 1980s and 1990s. Well, I guess the early 1990s, certainly the 1980s, where the game was a little bit more spread out than it is today. A lot less clutching and a lot less clutching, a lot less penalties. And while the 2-line pass has opened up the game, it's not a speed game the way it was then. And certainly when you look at goalies have a lot more equipment than they ever did back then. So I think it's a matter of, Seth, you called me on the way home last night, and look,
I was impressed you were awake. I'll be honest with you.
I mean, look, I went to sleep there soon thereafter. But look, the greatest stat in sports, whenever somebody asks you who's the greatest hockey player ever, well, if you want to say who's the greatest hockey player in a definitive period of time, maybe 10 years, you could put Bobby Orr in this. Bobby Orr. You can put him in the discussion, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're talking about the greatest hockey, much the same way as you could put Jim Brown in that discussion. And for a 10-year period, Sandy Koufax is the best pitcher ever. If you put a 10-year period, if you put a 5-year period, Terrell Davis may be the best running back ever for a 5-year period. But if you're talking about an altogether best hockey player ever, to me, I think in every other sport, and we've discussed this, but we discussed it a while back. In every other sport, you can have an argument. You can have a discussion. You may pick Jordan, I may pick LeBron. But there is a actual discussion to be had. If you want to talk baseball, if Ohtani does this for 10 more years, he may be the best player ever. I mean, but right now, you can say it's Ruth as a player, but with time and the way that it rolls, Babe Ruth never played against black players. So do you call him the same as you do Willie Mays, who had similar numbers? Not sure. I mean, it's certainly something you could discuss. If you want to go into football, you got Jim Brown, you got Walter Payton. You could pick any one of 1,000 quarterbacks, being Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. The discussion's there if you want to have it. There is no discussion in the NHL. There is no.
Well, let me ask you something, though. But we did talk last night.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
That the best that is Gretzky. It's always Gretzky, but if Lemieux had been healthy, could you make the argument? You thought you could.
Yeah, well, if Lemieux was healthy, but he wasn't. And that's the same. Look, if Koufax was healthy for 20 years, I could have made the argument that Koufax was the greatest pitcher ever.
No, because his first 5 years, he wasn't a great pitcher.
If you want to – okay, so if Mike Trout doesn't get injured the last 5 years, if Albert Pujols doesn't go downhill –
Fine, I get it. But Lemieux did have a 10 to 12-year run of health. I believe it was that long. Maybe not quite that.
I don't think it was quite that long. He had the back problems, and then he had the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which caused him to retire for a couple of years. So I really don't. I mean, I'm going to look it up. I don't think it was that long that he had. I may be wrong.
Is there any question those are the 3 greatest players of all time?
Oh, Gordie Howe has to be in there.
Over Lemieux, over Orr.
So hold on a second. So the first year that Lemieux missed, so Lemieux played 73, 79, 63, 77, 76 games. So that's 5 years.
5 years.
And in those 5 years, he averaged. Wait, why does it not come up with the average? It just comes up with how many he did over the 5 years. So he averaged 60 goals. Holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this. He averaged
60 goals and like 100 assists. I mean, like 90 assists. I mean, he had 199 points at age 23. I mean, that's insane. By the way, the record is 215 by Gretzky. Then he went to 59 games, 26 games, 64, 60, and 22. So not great. But in 60 games, he put up 160 points, Seth.
Yeah.
Like that's like Technobowl, Blades of Steel numbers. And then
his career average is almost 2 points a game.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'm saying he had played in 900 career games and had 1,700 career points.
Yep. So Gretzky, I love doing, and hockey reference is the same as baseball reference is basketball. I'll bring it up. Hold on a second. So present, share screen. So here's your presentation, right? It's only on half the screen. That doesn't really do it for me. I'll bring it up. The point being, okay, so Gretzky played 600 more games, had 900 more points. So Gretzky had almost 3,000 points in just over 1,500 games. So almost 2 points a game. We're in the same ballpark. And the same thing for Lemieux. Gretzky had 940 goals. Lemieux had 690. I mean, you're talking, yes. Could Lemieux have done it? Absolutely. I mean, Lemieux was the whole package.
Yeah, because he could hit.
He was sick. He didn't, but he could, right?
He
Because
could. Yeah. He was 6'4", I think, 6'5".
Yeah, 6'4", 6'5". I mean, Lemieux was fantastic. I loved watching Lemieux play. I really did. It was really to watch the 1980s and 1990s in hockey. And granted, I watched a lot more than most because I was at every Islander game, at least every Islander home game. I was very fortunate. But when you saw these guys come in, especially guys like Lemieux and Gretzky that just dominated, right? You always had to know where they were on the ice. And I mean, if you really want to put a label on it, I think Lemieux was very much like Phil Esposito, where he would just stand in the middle and take it. And Gretzky was a little bit more like Pat LaFontaine or somebody that circled around, right? And look, everybody called the back of the net Gretzky's office. That's just what it was. Now, you could also make the case, Seth, that Gretzky played on the greatest team of all time.
Could you make that argument for one of the back-to-back championship teams on the Penguins?
I don't think so. I mean,
the borderline Hall of Fame goalie in Barrasso. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer or not.
He's a Hall of Famer. He got in this year. So, all right. So in the year that he scored 199 goals, 199 points. The roster for that team had, you're right, Barrasso, who was 23 years old. He went 18 and 15 with 4 goals against.
Yeah, but I'm not talking. But that wasn't a team that won the title. They won in 91 and 92. They didn't win in 89.
Right. I was going to his best year. So if you want to go to 91, 92, because 92, 93 they got knocked out by David Volek.
Yeah.
Okay, so they won the Stanley Cup with this team. So Barrasso was the goalie. By the way, 25-22. 25 wins, 22 losses with a 3.5 goals against. They finished third in the Patrick division. They didn't run away with this league. And granted, look, they had Paul Coffey at age 30. They had Ron Francis in one of the greatest trades of all time. Jágr as a kid, 19. Jágr was like the 4th best player on that team at 19.
Kevin Stevens, I think, was on that team.
Sean McEachran, Mark Recchi. Kevin Stevens was one of those what ifs. Kevin Stevens got laid out in one game and broke basically his face. He fell down flat on his face and was never the same after that. They had Rick Tocchet, they had Brian Trottier, and they had Ken Regan and Wendell Young. I mean, Lemieux had 131 points in 64 games. Again, 2 points a game. Stevens goes for 54-69 for 123. Joey Mullen, Larry Murphy. I mean, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They had 7 Hall of Famers on that team. And Jaromir Jágr, who will never be in the Hall of Fame because he never stops playing.
Because he's never going to retire.
Right. So 7 Hall of Famers on that team. If we want to check and see the best of the Oilers, so 7 Hall of Famers, and Jágr as a rookie. Let's go to the 84-85 Oiler team, which was the one that beat the...
Is that the one that swept the Islanders?
No, that's the one that beat the Flyers. But let's go to the earlier one, 83-84. So Hall of Famers, Gretzky, Coffey, Curry, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 on that team.
Let me see if I can guess here. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's see what you got.
Gretzky,
Tikkanen. No, Tikkanen has not made the Hall of Fame.
Huh. Curry.
Tikkanen is just in the Hall of Fame of assholes. He's not in the Hall of Fame.
Fair. Curry. Yari Curry.
2.
Messier.
3.
Glenn Anderson.
4. Well done. 4.
Grand Fuhr.
5.
Kevin
The,
Lowe.
the next two are going to be pretty hard.
Kevin Lowe.
Kevin Lowe, that was the hard one. 6.
Steve Smith.
No.
I'm missing an offensive player, aren't I?
You're missing a guy we just talked about. It's the reason why we went here.
Paul Coffey.
Paul Coffey. There's 7. Now,
there
you name all the ones on Pittsburgh.
Well, Pittsburgh would be Mullen, Recchi, Stevens.
Good. No, Stevens didn't make the Hall of Fame.
Really?
Huh. Stevens is nowhere close to the Hall of Fame. So, like I said, Stevens' career. So, Stevens, he broke his face. I mean, so at age 28, he had 41 goals, 47 assists, and 88 points. After that, he never had more than 43 points in a year. Starting at age 28. I mean, it was a precipitous climb. All right, precipitous fall. So, okay. So you got Lemieux, Mullen, and Murphy. Who else you got?
Recchi.
4.
Coffey.
5.
Barrasso.
6.
You said I'm missing 1?
You're missing 2. And I don't think you're going to get either one of them. One was an old player that happened to be on the team.
Who?
Brian Trottier was number 7.
That's right.
Trottier has 6 rings. Trottier is like ridiculous.
He's the Charles Haley of the NHL. Yeah, I get it.
He was the best, except Charles Haley was never the best player in the league for a year.
Was Trottier the best player in the league one year?
Trottier won the Hart Trophy one year, so he's the best player in the league. And who's the 8th? Who's the 8th?
Can't be Yager because he was, as we said, he's not in yet.
The 8th may be the best number 2. Well, the second best number 2 center of all time behind Messier. Messier is the best number 2 center of all time. Of modern times, because I'm not going back to Montreal.
You're not going back to Jean Bellevue?
Yeah.
Who is it?
Ron Francis.
I should have known that.
Ron Francis was ridiculous in what he did over his career. Ron Francis averaged a point a game for like 20 years, 16 years, point a game. And in those Pittsburgh years, he had 119 points in 95, 96, 100 points in 92, 93, and 93 points in 93, 94. I mean, he was.
Yeah, he was. I forgot. I should have known that. He was.
And he is now the general manager of the Seattle Kraken.
I knew he was. Yeah. Those, I mean, those, as I said, those were 2 sensational teams.
They were. Which is what
I'm not sure if there's teams of the modern era that were really as good.
Well, I mean, look, if you want to go back to what do you consider the modern era?
The last 20 years. Is there any?
Okay. All right. Well, if you want to take a team, I want to see this. Those Detroit teams, the ones with
Yzerman, Fedorov, Konstantinov.
I'm wondering how many Hall of Famers were on those teams. So here we go.
The team that the Devils swept in 1995?
Which means they won in 94. So
no, they didn't. They won in 96.
No, they won 96. All right. So let's look at
94 was the Rangers.
So 95, 96 team.
I don't know if it's 95, 96 or 96, 97. I get confused.
No, it's not 95, 96. So let's see 96, 97. Yep, 96, 97. All right.
Yzerman?
How many Hall of Famers do they have? Can you name them?
I don't know. Vernon?
They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now 8. They have 8. Look at that. 8 Hall of Famers.
I'm hoping I can name 5 of them.
Okay, let's see.
Mike Vernon.
Yes. Well done. That was the last one. He goes in this year.
He went in this year.
Yes.
Well, Vernon was one of my favorite goalies of all time. That's why I know.
Yzerman. 2.
Fedorov.
3.
I am having trouble remembering this team.
Well, you got one that played on the Devils.
Is it Claude Lemieux? No, Claude Lemieux was in Colorado. Not for Beek. can't remember the team. I remember Iserman.
Shanahan.
What?
Brendan Shanahan.
Brendan Shanahan.
Igor Larionov. Fetisov. That was the guy that I thought you might get from the Devils.
Because he was also he was the first Russian to come over with. I forgot he was on that team.
Larry Murphy.
That I should have.
And Nicholas Lindstrom.
Lindstrom was there at that point?
Lindstrom was 26 years old. Now, I'm interested in seeing...
He felt like he was around forever.
So the Brett Hull years with Hasek and with...
Yeah, those were much later.
Right. But, we were talking about... Okay, so they won the Cup in 2001, 2002. You said the last 20 years. So I'm wondering how many Hall of Famers are on this team. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Shouldn't you
8.
be guessing? Like, you're the hockey guy, not me.
Wow. 9 Hall of Famers on this one. Well, I know them all. So let's see what you got. 9 Hall of Famers.
Chelios
with the big one.
Hull.
2.
Hasek.
3.
Iserman Fedorov.
4, 5.
Larry Murphy wasn't there at that point.
Nope.
Larionov wasn't there at that point.
Yes, he was. 6.
Was he still?
He was 41 years old.
Lidstrom.
7. Get me the 8th. You're going to have a hard time with 8.
Certainly not Bobby Probert or Joey Koser.
Neither one was on that team.
Unless there was a brawler Hall of Fame. Cicerelli.
Nope. You're gonna have a pretty hard time. It was
Luke
Robitaille.
Cicerelli wasn't on that team?
Not on that team. Luke Robitaille.
I wouldn't have thought of him as a Red Wing.
That's what I said. You were gonna have a hard time with that one. Yeah. That was where you got. So he must have
been at the end of his career at that point.
Yep. And then 2007, 2008 had 2 Hall of Famers. So they had Lindstrom and Chelios, and that was it. And Hasek, 3.
Iserman was gone by then?
Uh-huh. Yep. That was the Datsuk and Zetterberg era where they beat the Penguins in that year in 2007.
Colorado won what, 2? Or they won? They won in 96, they won in 01.
Colorado won 2, and then they just won 1 2 years ago.
Yeah, but I don't count that.
We don't count that.
I'm talking about all-time great teams. They kind of going a little bit further, more than one win. Although they went to the finals the year before, I think.
Yep, that was the Claude Lemieux years. So they won. Hold on. I'm picking it up.
Well, they won in 01 because they beat the Devils. That's the Ray Bourque team.
Yep, 2000 to 01, and they had 3, 4, 5 Hall of Famers.
Wow.
And no Claude Lemieux.
They had Waugh.
They had Waugh.
They had Bourque.
They had Bourque.
They had Sakic.
They had Sakic.
They had Forsberg.
They had Forsberg. Get the 5th.
Got to be I assume it's a winger.
Nope, it's a defenseman.
Oh, is it Adam Foote?
It is Rob Blake.
I would have gotten to that one. Okay. I did pretty for not a guy who's not a real hockey guy. I think I did okay on these.
Okay, let's go 95, 96 Avalanche.
Oh, God.
1, 2, no, 3. You're going to get them all. I mean, there's only 3. It's Waugh.
Well, there's 3. It's Forsberg, Sakic, and Waugh.
Waugh. That's it. So, yeah. Look, hockey. If you're listening to this broadcast and you have not seen a hockey game live, I implore you to go see one. I really.
It is a good time. I don't think Jake was pleased that I went without him.
Maybe I wouldn't be pleased either.
When you come up, we'll see if there's a game.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if there's a game that week. I did want to say by the way, I know you're not in your office, but you should hit the bobblehead for Joey Flacco.
He's back.
He could start against the Rams this week. Joey Flacco. And congratulations to Deshaun Jackson for finally retiring as an Eagle. He hasn't played like really played in like a couple of years, but congrats to him.
Well, that man killed the Giants more than just about anybody known to man.
Yep. And now that the Jets have the butt fumble and the kickoff from hell,
you mean the intercept? You mean the Hail Mary from hell?
Yeah, the Hail
Hail
Mary.
Mary.
Hail Mary from him.
I think the Hail Mary sounds good.
The Hail Mary. Yeah, my season is over, and at 4-7, and now I am in tank mode, which my team will never tank. So
you are.
We are who we are. You got to be. Look, we're 11 or 12 games. We're 11 games. Everybody's 11 in at this point. And you're seeing some front runners, right? You're seeing Miami at 8-3. You're seeing Baltimore at 9-3. Somehow Pittsburgh is still at 7-4. I'm still trying to figure out. I know you don't like Mike Tomlin.
I do like. Why wouldn't I like Mike Tomlin?
No, I. On this cast, you've always said Mike Tomlin's a good coach. He's a good coach, yes. And I know that Pittsburgh Steelers fans have been saying we got to get rid of this guy.
Yeah, for 17 years.
I cannot imagine why you would get rid of this guy with a 7-4 record.
He's never had a losing season.
And even worse, this season, he's got nothing. There is nobody on that team. Did you see what Deontay Johnson did after the pickoff or the fumble? So Gerald Warren gets fumbles, and Deontay Johnson, who was pissed because Tomlin didn't challenge the play before, just put his hands on his hips and watched. These guys are ridiculous. So Jacksonville has pulled ahead at 8-3, and Kansas City is 8-3.
But here's the thing: has Miami beaten a good team yet?
Are the Jets considered a good team?
Are the Jets considered a good team?
No, they beat the Chargers, the Patriots, the Broncos before the Broncos were the Broncos, and they beat them 70-20.
Yes, they did.
The Giants, the Panthers, the Raiders, the Jets, and the Patriots. So the answer is no.
Right. Who have they lost to?
They have lost to the Bills, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. Which, to be fair, come on. So they lost on the road in Buffalo.
They got their ass handed to them.
They lost on the road to the Eagles.
Yes. And
they lost at home by 7 to the Chiefs.
Okay. So unless they can become the 1 seed, which I do not believe they can, they're going to have to go on the road probably somewhere cold to go to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Do you see them doing that?
Where are they? Can they beat I think they can beat the Chiefs.
Because the Chiefs have not been the Chiefs this year.
Right. Well, that's why I said they can beat the Chiefs. Even on the road,
I'm not sure they can go to Kansas City in 30-degree weather in January and win. I don't think they can beat a cold weather team in January.
Okay.
Jacksonville, I don't think has beaten anybody either.
Probably not. I can look at Jacksonville's schedule. Well, it doesn't help that they didn't play against. Jacksonville has beaten the Colts, the Falcons, the Bills. They beat the Bills. The Colts, at the Saints, at the Steelers, the Titans, and at the Texans, which is a harder game than it's been in the past.
Yeah, that was a really good game, actually.
So they lost at home against the Chiefs. They lost at home against the Texans, and they lost at home against the Niners. So maybe they should go on the road, because they've won every game on the road. Maybe they should have the playoff game in London.
Could be.
They'd be great. They'd be fantastic.
Look, I don't think I think the two best teams in the NFL this year are in the NFC.
So Jacksonville is 8-3. They play at home against the Bengals on Monday night.
They should win. I mean, without Burrow, the Cincinnati looks lost. So
they play at Cleveland, probably a win.
Probably.
If it's Joe Flacco, definitely a win.
Wow, as opposed to Dorian Thompson, DTR.
All right, so let's call it a loss. Okay, so you're 9-3, you're 9-4. You face the Ravens at home. That's probably a loss on Sunday night. So it's 9-5. At Tampa Bay, I think that's a win. 10-5.
Yes.
At home against the Panthers, 11-5. And at home and at Tennessee, which could be the difference between home field and not home field.
Yeah, they could be the 1 seed. I don't dispute that. What I dispute is I want to see them beat. Look, the best team they beat this year is the Bills.
Yep.
Who have been disappointing. I want to see them beat Kansas City or Baltimore.
Look, and part of this is the schedule too. So I'm looking at Baltimore, right? Baltimore, the best team that they beat Burrow on the road. They beat the Browns on the road. They beat the Lions at home. Okay, maybe the Lions are that team. And they beat Seattle at home. That's all they've beaten. So is it possible that, to your point, the AFC just sucks? So when you say, who did you beat? You're talking about the one out-of-conference game that might have mattered? And probably most of them lost that game?
Yeah, I mean, look, the AFC has been shockingly weak this year. Buffalo's been disappointing. Cincy with Burrow hurt has just not been very good. Kansas City, finally, it feels like they just lost too many weapons. And, I mean, to me, Philly, San Francisco, and maybe even Dallas, although Dallas to me still has to beat Philly or San Francisco. It has to win a playoff game, as we've talked about. They look to me like the 3 best teams in the league.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, look, that's going to cause a really good matchup, right?
Yes.
I mean, the Eagles are 10-1 and have 2 games on. Granted, they have 2 games against Dallas coming up, and we all know your feelings on Dallas. But they do have 2 games coming up against Dallas. But they also have a 2-game lead on that number 1 seed. I mean, they are in conference 6-0. I mean, they've only lost 1 game, but they're 6-0 in conference. The Niners are 6-1. Detroit is 5-2, and Minnesota is 6-6. All their losses, believe it or not, have come against the AFC.
The AFC?
The AFC. They are 6-3.
They lost to the. What are you talking about? They lost to the Bears on Monday night.
Oh, sorry. They're 6-3 in conference. So they've 3 losses have come against the AFC. Sorry about that. But they have they have just as many wins as anybody else in that conference. They have 6 wins. So my point is the Eagles are 6-0 in conference. The Vikings are 6-3 in conference. So they have 6 wins in their conference. So they play mostly out of conference going forward is the point.
Okay.
So for tiebreaker purposes. Yeah, I agree with you that you got San Fran, you got Detroit, and you got Philadelphia, right? And maybe Dallas sneaking in there.
Who would you take, Detroit or Dallas, in a neutral field?
Where's the game?
Neutral field.
Well, it's in the dome no matter what, right? It's in the dome no matter what. It's either in Ford Field. I'd take Dallas. I think I'd take Dallas.
I would.
I think I'd take Dallas.
I think Detroit's having a really nice year. I just don't know if they're physical enough to handle these teams.
And the funny thing is you have absolutely no confidence in Dallas. So I'm
No. No, I have no confidence in Dallas that they can beat San Francisco or Philadelphia in a playoff game.
Right.
I mean, I'm confident they can go 12-5. I mean, Prescott's having a good year. Their defense is fantastic. You know, CeeDee Lamb is a top 3 receiver this year behind Tyreek and, you know, or right with Tyreek and AJ Brown. But because they're there every year and don't do anything, I need to see some progression before I believe. And the only way you see progression with them is when it is beating San Francisco or Philly in the playoff. I think that's all there is for them. Otherwise, they're just, a permanent gatekeeper.
Yeah. I mean, so right now, if you're looking at we're 3/4 of the way done with 12 games gone. Where are you looking in the AFC? Like, who's your best team coming out of the AFC right now? Let me put it this way. Who's the team to beat in the playoffs? Not the best team right now.
The team to beat in the playoffs is still Kansas City because they're Kansas City.
Okay.
I go through these teams, and I can't believe I'm going to say this. I don't even know if this team is going to make the playoffs. I really don't think I would want to play Buffalo. As bad as they've been this year, they are still dangerous as hell. I don't trust Jacksonville's defense. I certainly don't trust Pittsburgh. Baltimore without Mark Andrews scares me from a passing perspective, and their offense still scares me, especially without Andrews.
Yeah.
Miami scares me in any game that's under 50 degrees. Buffalo, if they can make the playoffs, and I know that sounds incredibly silly because the top 7 teams make it. You think that the team I would be really concerned with should have no problem getting in.
But that's not true. We know that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Buffalo's remaining, they're 6-6.
And their schedule is tough.
The remaining schedule is at the Chiefs, which I think is at the Chiefs and at home against the Cowboys. I think they got to win one of them.
I do. I agree.
They can't lose both of them.
No.
I think they win at the Chargers. I think they beat the Patriots at home. And then they face off against the Dolphins to end the season in Miami. I mean, if I'm them, I think they definitely have to split the next 2 weeks, if not win them both.
Well, look, I think most likely 9-8 will do it. So you need to win 10-7 will definitely do it. 9-8, I think will. Because all these AFC Central teams are going to beat up on each other. I mean, unless Houston can pull that. I mean, what Houston's done
right now they are 10th in the playoff run. They are behind the Broncos, who are 6-5, and they have a game in hand. They're behind. Remember, Buffalo's 6-6.
Mm-hmm.
Denver is 6-5. Houston is 6-5. Indy is 6-5. So you have 3 6-5 teams who are 7, 8, and 9, all with a game in hand. Now, granted, he plays Houston, so I think they probably play him twice. Nope, they played him once already, so they play him the last game of the year, which may be for a playoff spot. And then you have Cleveland in there, who again plays against Pittsburgh and plays against Baltimore. Right. It's same
without their quarterback, without their running back, and I think Amari Cooper's hurt.
Okay.
So you look at teams 6, 7, 8, and 9, and I realize Denver's on a wonderful run.
Yep.
But I don't have a hell of a lot of confidence in them. Houston's is a great story. Maybe they can, again, their schedule is probably pretty easy going through. Indianapolis is without their quarterback and without Jonathan Taylor may be injured again. And I would still take Buffalo over all these teams. And again,
that's not where we are, right? It's not taking them over these teams. It's if they can make up the ground, right?
Yeah, that's it. If they can, as I said, it sounds very silly.
Yeah.
If they can make the playoffs, I think they are a really dangerous team. I just don't know if they can make the playoffs. I think they still can. They're 3 teams ahead, but they're a game out. So it's all relative. So we'll see. I mean, my Super Bowl in the beginning of the year was Bengals-Niners. I really liked that except Burrow couldn't stay healthy.
Yep.
And Kansas City looks old. I don't know if old is the right word. They look a little beaten down. I don't think anyone sees, the Ravens have just too many injuries on the offensive side. I don't think the Jaguars are a Super Bowl team. I don't think Miami can win on the road in January. I don't think anyone really believes Kenny Pickett is bringing a team to the Super Bowl at this point. And the Browns, the Browns are not going anywhere. The Colts are not going anywhere. Denver's not going to the Super Bowl, and neither is Houston. I mean, I find it really weird that that's kind of where I'm going with this. But it just seems Buffalo has been incredibly snake bitten this year. And at some point, but again, I say this about the Chargers every year, and it goes to hell in a handbasket. But they should have won the Eagles game. They should have won the Broncos game. I forget some of the other ones they lost. They should not have lost to the Jets.
Nope.
I mean,
Trust me, I wish we hadn't won that game now. If we didn't win that game now, we'd be a top 10 pick. We'd be a top 5 pick. If we're 3-7, we have the 4 slot. I mean, yes, please.
Yeah. So I mean, the AFC is very open. Is really, I mean, you look at the AFC. How many teams at this point could you see going to the Super Bowl?
I'm going through my head. I mean, I don't
just look at the list.
I mean, I can look at the list, but it ain't going to really matter. How about 0? I mean,
not sure that's an option.
No, I know that's the problem, right? Look, I agree with you. If Buffalo makes it, they are the most complete team and the most healthy team of all, yes. Right? So if they can make it, and granted, they'd have to play on the road the entire time. So that's another cause for, if Miami gets home field advantage, I would pick Miami. If they get home field advantage throughout the entire thing, if they never have to go on the road, I would pick Miami. And right now at 8-3, their schedule is at the Commanders. I got to think that's their favorites for that, right? Because anybody's. So at the Commanders, at home against the Titans, at home against the Jets, then they play the Cowboys at home. That could be the turning point. They play at the Ravens, which I will call a loss because that's going to be on New Year's Eve day, which means it's going to be bitter cold. And then they play home against the Bills. And the home against the Bills game may determine 2 teams' playoff fortunes, right?
Yeah.
Because if they go 9-3, 10-3, 11-3, and then have to face the Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills, and they take 2 out of those 3, and they would finish 13-4.
Then they are the 1 seed, and they are the favorite.
They have the number 1 seed, and they are the favorite. If they have to go on the road, I don't view them that way. They're just not a road team. They are fast, right? And they are really, really fast. The entire team is – I mean, when Tyreek Hill is not your fastest player on your team, you know your team is pretty fast. Yeah. And they haven't even gotten Arcane back yet as a healthy guy. If they have to go on the road, I pick Baltimore because I agree with you. The passing game is not there. But do you need it? If Baltimore gets home field throughout the entire playoff spot, do you need it? You can just – I remember 2 teams out of New York that did that for a while. When Mark Ingram was your top wide receiver and Phil McConkey was your top wide receiver, I mean, do you really need to say more? I mean, you can win with running and defense. We've seen it before, and we'll see it again. It is a different game, and I will tell you that's a game I'd love to see is Baltimore at home against Kansas City in an AFC Championship game. That would be a fun game to watch. I'd be interested in watching because I'd love to see what Spagnuolo does against Lamar Jackson. Blitz. But
Lamar Jackson has not had a good playoff record. I mean, look, everybody is paled in comparison to Patrick Mahomes.
And Brady.
And Brady. But
Well,
I mean, Brady's not wrong that the AFC is mediocre. That the AFC is mediocre.
no.
But it doesn't feel like Kansas City's year. Just doesn't to me. And if
You
it's not
have
Kansas City's year, none of these teams have been to the Super Bowl in a pretty long time. It's a free for all.
if you have Philadelphia at San Francisco, who are you taking in that game?
San Francisco.
If you have San Francisco at Philadelphia, who are you taking in that game?
Is Christian McCaffrey playing quarterback?
No, Brock Purdy is playing quarterback.
Who's their backup?
Oh, you think it's going to be that bad?
No, I'm kidding. I actually think.
By the way, your backup is Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold. Yeah, I would take Philly at home. I would take San Francisco at home. I don't think Philly's been great this year. Like, I think it's been a really weird year. They've won a lot of really, really close games, including against teams that have not been very good, like the Commanders.
That's true. Agreed. Yeah. I mean,
I think a healthy San Francisco team is the best team.
So what do you do? Tell me, because there are many people that basically lost their fantasy seasons this week. I am one of those people. Both of my teams are out of the playoffs.
This is our Derek Jeter year.
No, even my other team, even my other league, I made Anthony Richardson, great pick, hurt. I trade for Joe Burrow, amazing for 1 week, hurt. I go get Tua in a trade, 7 points, and I lose the week, and that's it, and I'm done. What advice do you give to those people like myself who you don't have a team to root for because you're rooting for them to lose? You have, if you say drink, which I know is what you're about to say, you have no fantasy teams. Obviously, you're in a pick'em league, and I think I'm 6 behind the leader. So that's a pretty good season so far. I got room to go. What do you tell people like that? What do you tell? If you're in that situation, can you watch the NFL? Because I'm not sure you can. I have no interest. I had no interest this past weekend. None.
Well, because I mean, you always can because the NFL's fun, but it's why you need to be in more leagues, and maybe we'll start our other one next year, because God knows I'm not in enough of them. And look, it's a different watch. You watch for the good games. You watch. I think the Eagles and Niners play this week.
Yep.
That you watch. But it's not stay-at-home mandatory.
Right.
And
I think that's it, right? It's not stay-at-home mandatory. That's exactly the point. And Sunday night football is not mandatory watching, and Monday night football is not mandatory watching. And to tell you the truth, after Black Friday, neither was after the halftime for the Jets and Dolphins. Not mandatory watching at all. Okay, so let's move on to other things. And one of the surprise things that happened last night was there was an announcement that there's an agreement in place for Mark Cuban to sell the majority ownership of the Mavs at a evaluation of like $2.5 billion. $3.5 billion. It was a lot. It's a lot of money. Is this a good thing for the league or a bad thing for the league?
It's a bad thing for the league, I think. Sorry. Yeah, it's a bad thing for the league because First of all, I think First of all, I think Mark Cuban's a great owner. I wish every owner was Mark Cuban. I don't really understand it, to be perfectly honest. I do understand it if my thought process is right. But
Okay,
if
so
he's
what's your
going
thought
to
process?
I think he's going to run for president.
Oh my Lord.
I think he's liquidating the run for president because I don't think he would sell. He doesn't need the money. So again, this is off the top of my head.
Yeah.
He's getting off of Shark Tank.
Yep.
He loves the Mavericks more than I think anybody loves their team.
He's still maintaining a stake and has control of the operations.
Right. But then he's selling it for $3 billion, which I realize sounds ridiculous, but does he need $3 billion?
He got 5.7 when he sold broadcast.com.
Right. So what's he worth now? 30 or 40?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I could tell you. Mark Cuban net worth, $6.2 billion.
Okay, well then I guess 3 billion is a nice
It's a nice chunk of change. You really think he's running for president? You think that's where this is going?
I'm wondering.
Okay.
We have two very old men that are running for president.
Look, he'd be the most likable guy out there. I'm not sure he'd be the best candidate, but he'd certainly be likable. I'm not sure I would vote for him, but then again, I don't know who I would vote for right now. Well, I know.
Yes,
who
you do.
I know who I would. No. I know who I wouldn't. That doesn't necessarily mean I know who I would. I'm not sure about that.
I'm wondering if that's the reason.
Yeah.
You know, like it's because I don't believe he's someone who you give up doing certain things to be with your family.
Yep.
You don't have to give up owning a basketball team to be with your family. You take a step back and you could just be a normal owner. But that maybe that's the thing is, what is he? He's got to be about 62, 63.
65.
So, I mean, his kids are, I think he has kids a little bit older than mine. I don't think his kids are that
He's got
old.
a senior in high school. He's got a couple in high school.
Okay. I didn't realize it was that. I mean, so he's not going, so let's just kind of talking it out. He's not going to, it's not like he's going to see his kids a lot more because his kids are in high school.
Yep.
No one is retiring to stay home with their wife. That doesn't exist. So what else is there? What's the reason?
Yeah. All right. We got about.
But also it's weird because he's merging with Adelson, they want to build a casino in Texas, and casinos are illegal in Texas. That's where and I cannot imagine they're going to move the team to Vegas. I just don't see it. So I don't really know. It doesn't make sense to me unless there's a real reason for him doing this.
Okay. So we got 5 more minutes left, but I want to run real quick, rapid fire. So yay or nay, Sean Lewis hired at San Diego State? Or doesn't move the needle at all for you?
I mean, was he hired?
He was. Sean Lewis was hired.
Doesn't move it's not like he's coaching basketball at San Diego State. Doesn't really move the needle. I mean, I think he would have been a good coach at Syracuse, to be perfectly honest.
Trent Bray hired to take over for Jonathan Smith at Oregon State.
I know nothing about him. He's their defensive coordinator. I know nothing about him.
Fran Brown hired by Syracuse.
Who?
The Georgia defensive backs coach. Bobby Petrino returning to Arkansas. Yes.
Did you guys hire a coach?
Yeah, we hired the defensive backs coach for Georgia.
Okay, I got
He's
nothing.
the number 1 recruiter in the country.
Okay, well,
and he recruits.
Now we'll see if he can really recruit.
Mike Elko hired by A&M.
Good hire. He's not going to promise championships, but it's a good hire.
$7.5 million a year for him.
They don't care. They're paying off $80 million to Jimbo. What the hell do they
Jeff
care?
Levy, hired by Mississippi State.
Like it. Good offensive coordinator. I'm good with it.
Okay. Indiana fires Tom Allen.
Yeah, you knew that was coming. He had one good year during COVID, and every other, I think they're 2-10 this year.
Dana Holgerson, who actually has the greatest line of all, went over the summer. He goes, I got too much of a buyout for them to fire me. Guess what, Dana? No buyouts that big. You're gone.
Do you know why? Because the Fertitta brothers are massive donors in Houston.
Right. So
they're going to get a big time coach.
They're going to pay him $14.8 million not to coach anymore.
It's child's play to them. Michigan
State hires Jonathan Smith of Oregon State.
It's a D'Antoni hire. It's a boring. It's a good. He's been a really good coach at Oregon State. Think about the words I just said. He was a really good coach at Oregon State. He should do well.
Okay. All right. Last 5 minutes. Got anything for me?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, I will say one thing. Well, two things actually. Congratulations on Deshaun Jackson retirement. Yay. And we will all be looking forward to seeing Joe Willie Flacco play this. If you do not know the story, ladies and gentlemen, Seth Kamens has a vendetta against Joe Willie Flacco.
I like that he's Joe Willie Flacco. Is he related to
once he signed that agreement, he became Joe Willie Flacco because he got himself a Super Bowl and got himself a bag of cash.
There you
go. All right, everybody. Have a great day. We'll talk to you guys next week. See ya.
Bye.